Spider-Man is back in theaters. Which one, you may ask? All of them. Yup, all of them. Original trilogy, Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3. The following duology, if that's even a word, The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And then lastly, the current trilogy, the Homecoming trilogy, Far From Home, No Way Home trilogy, that whole thing. Each of these movies is going to be back in theaters for 1 week at a time. That's it, only 1 week, and then the next one comes to theaters the following week. Due to the re-release of all these movies, I figured what better time than now to break down how each of these films do as an adaptation. When you compare these films to the comics, are they accurate? The goal is to see how faithful every single movie is to the comics. If you're new around here, you may not know this, but I find a lot of joy and entertainment in breaking down how accurate Spider-Man material is to the source. With that being said, if I say something is inaccurate, that doesn't mean I'm saying it's bad or it's a terrible movie. I'm just saying it's, well, inaccurate. Inaccurate things can be better than accurate things. Everything's subjective. But when determining accuracy, the goal is to be as objective and unbiased as possible. Today, we are going to look at and break down the original, the OG, quite possibly the film that kick-started the large majority of Spider-Man fans' fandom. Spider-Man. If it wasn't clear which one we're talking about the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. This absolute banger of a movie came out in 2002, and man, was it a game changer. Most superhero films are like flat out cheesy, and you'd get like this over-the-top portrayal of the characters we love to read about. Or they would be like too ashamed to be a superhero film, and you like wouldn't really see the character we know and love that we read about, even though they're in the movie. It's like a totally different character than the one we know. But no, Spider-Man really found the perfect mix and blend to make us all take superhero movies seriously. Honestly, outside of Blade, I don't know if any movie prior to this film was even close to finding that balance. And not to take away anything from Blade, but it's not nearly as colorful and bashful as Spider-Man. I do love Blade though. Spider-Man really is one of the first great superhero movies, especially when you look at Marvel exclusively, but how does it do as an adaptation? Is it faithful to the comics? Does it take a lot of liberties? Let's break it down and see. Starting with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Spider-Man / Peter Parker. Is this an accurate adaptation for Spider-Man / Peter Parker? How does Tobey Maguire do? When you look at Tobey Maguire's performance as Spider-Man, there's a lot of accurate things and honestly, some inaccurate things as well. Let's start with the more accurate side, okay? Tobey's pretty great at showing off Peter as like a loner nerd, you know? At no point do people question if Peter is the biggest nerd around or not. He's a nerd. I mean, the movie even starts with Peter really just showing off how far down on the social totem pole he is. I feel so bad for Mans, but honestly, comic 616 Peter Parker is not much different. He definitely gets bullied and made fun of a lot. However, I do think it's important to note that the comic book version of Peter is way more fiery than Tobey's portrayal. In the comics, in 616, Peter would get roasted by Flash and he would dish it out back in like tenfold. Peter would roast back. Peter definitely got bullied a lot, but he definitely didn't just take the bullying. He fought back. Tobey's Peter, however, is not really like that.
Next, we have...
When I say Peter's fiery, I mean, he can also come off as like a loose cannon. When he's younger, he's way more likely to go off on someone. He's gone off on Jameson quite a few times for lying on his name. I can't ever picture Tobey Spider-Man doing this, man. Tobey Spider-Man just wouldn't. Tobey Spider-Man literally just tries to prove him wrong with his own actions. Which 616 Spider-Man also tries, but you'd like to see him get, like, you know, his younger, hot-headed self a bit. Spider-Man's origin story for how he gets his powers is pretty similar to the books, though. The spider webs itself down and bites Peter during a field trip, thus giving Peter spider powers. From there, Spider-Man would go and wrestle in a show, which actually also happens in the comics. Hey, this origin's pretty accurate so far. Where they differ, however, Peter in the movie tries to get paid, and he gets cheated out of pretty much $2,900. The comics are a little different. Peter's offered a job as entertainment, and he's doing great. Lots of people want him to give him the big bucks, and he's living the good life. When he's leaving, a robber steals a dude's money, and Peter has an opportunity to stop him, but he chooses not to. He tells the cop, "That's your job. I'm done being pushed around, man." In the movie, Peter is cheated out of his money, and then the man who cheated Peter gets robbed, and Peter lets him go. These differ slightly, but it gives them totally different meanings. The comic version of Peter feels straight up selfish. He needs time to learn to not be an a-hole. The movie version is a better lesson, in my opinion. Just because someone screws you over doesn't mean you stop being a superhero. More damage can be caused if you don't stop them then and now. I'm not here to debate which is better. I'm just saying it's not crazy accurate, but not bad either. I just want to point out I find it unbelievable that a cop in either situation calls out a regular civilian for not stopping a gunman. Like, are you serious? Yeah, Peter's Spider-Man, and he could have stopped him, but nobody knows this. All he did was win a wrestling match. Now he's expected to fend off a gunman for someone else's money? Simply ludicrous mindset from this officer. This isn't too big, but regarding Uncle Ben's death, he gets killed in differing locations. In the comics, it's at home, and in the movies, it's in his car in New York City. Again, not too big, just wanted to point it out. One thing that I find very interesting that is kind of like accurate and kind of not, is that Uncle Ben does say,
"With great power comes great responsibility."
Now originally, this is not what happened. The narrator actually says it. But in a later comic, Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, Peter remembers and recalls a time when Uncle Ben said, "With great power comes great responsibility." This did in fact come out before the Raimi film, so that does mean the Raimi film is accurate. The scene itself we've seen never actually happens though. But I guess it's an off-panel moment with Uncle Ben. We can live with that. One final thing I'd like to point out about good old Peter is I feel like he doesn't have much charisma in the movie when you look at the comics. They differ greatly. In the comics, Peter's kind of a ladies' man. He's somehow nerdy, but also somehow very good with women. He's a smooth talker for sure, and he's a handsome guy. Tobey's handsome too, but his dialogue is anything but smooth, man.
Me and said, "Aunt May? Aunt May? Is that an angel?"
Gee, did I say that?
The man says gee. As a teenager. What teenager says gee? Did I say that? Stop it, bruh. Stop it. He finds his words at certain points, yeah, but it's painful to watch a lot of the time, man. Versus like in the comics, he can't help but have women want him. Overall, I think Peter's adapted very well in Spider-Man, and Tobey really does a phenomenal job at the role. However, as Spider-Man, Tobey's adaptation takes more liberties and differs a bit from the comics, like as Spider-Man the hero, not just Spider-Man overall. For one, his webs come inside his own body. This is not accurate. So many people think this is accurate because of the movies when it's not. It's not accurate. I get it. I get why you would say this is accurate. Why is he called Spider-Man when he can't actually make his own webs, right? Well, some comics take liberties and say he created the formula in the first place because of the spider bite, like gave him the tutelage to know how to make it. But that kind of goes out of the window when you recognize how many other people make web fluid, like Genki. He was never bit by a spider. So yeah, I totally understand where everyone is coming from, but it's not accurate. It's just not, and that's what we're here to determine if the stuff is accurate. Stan Lee wrote that Spider-Man making his own web shows that Spider-Man is smart, and I think it does. I really do agree with it. It's just that other people down the line flanderize this a bit. Spider-Man doesn't look nearly as smart if everybody else can do this. Tobey's Spider-Man in this film specifically also isn't really quippy. He has like one or two good ones, but Spider-Man in the comics is a quip slinger.
Spider-Man! I knew you two were in this together!
Hey, kiddo, let Mom and Dad talk for a minute, will ya?
He makes jokes constantly. It's a bit different from Tobey's Spider-Man, who says like a cheesy one-liner a few times in the film. But when it comes to embodying responsibility, however, it's hard to deny Tobey's Spider-Man isn't incredible. This man really gets it. This man really understands what it means to be Spider-Man. He misses class and misses his job to save the people of New York City. Now that is freaking Spider-Man. At his core, he's missing some things or lacking in certain aspects. But he really is a phenomenal Peter Parker and Spider-Man. We were truly blessed to have this portrayal be the first ever Spider-Man live-action adaptation. Just blessed. Green Goblin Norman Osborn.
Back to formula.
If you've been around my channel a bit, you know what I think about this Norman. But for the ones who haven't, please sit back, get comfy, because I could break down this man all day. I am obsessed with this Norman Osborn adaptation. This is one of the all-time greats when we talk about Spider-Man adaptations. It's straight up enamoring. The performance that Willem Dafoe puts forth is just the Green Goblin. Willem Dafoe's Norman Osborn is already not a great person. He's a pretty scummy dude, his peers do not like him, but he himself doesn't see himself as evil. To Norman, he's a hard-working businessman who created an empire. The toes he had to step on along the way do not matter because Norman made it. This is to a T 616 Norman. The man really just absolves all of his own flaws with his own successes. If he wins, why do the losses of others matter? He then takes the Goblin serum and has like a two different personality thing at first. He kills, but he won't remember any of it. He'll literally kill competitors and steal his own equipment and not remember any of it. Gets forced out of his own company, kills the board members and doesn't remember any of it. It's not until this scene right here that's just so phenomenally done, does it become privy to Norman that he's the one who's been doing this all along.
I'm right here.
I don't understand.
Did you think it was coincidence?
And maybe for a split second he feels guilt, but that fades very quickly, and the man is all aboard the train because he realizes this is going to help him in life. He's going to get further in life now. Norman and his other personality align, and they just say screw it. This again feels like Norman Osborn and Green Goblin in the 616 comics. The two aren't always one and the same, but Norman is an evil dude, as is the Goblin. You put these two together and they're like two homies drinking beer at the bar. His relationship with Harry is also excellently done in this adaptation. He barely shows him any love until he feels as though it could be helpful to him, or it could actually benefit him. He haunts Harry well long after he's gone. Like, man, this stuff is so freaking good. It's so expertly done. This is stuff you see in the comics. You can see the literal dive into madness the villain takes in this movie. He goes from bad to evil. The only real flaw you can say is the costume. It looks literally nothing like 616. And yeah, this is definitely not accurate. I'm gonna be real, it's not accurate. It looks neat, you know, he looks like a cool guy, he looks like a cool monstrous dude with this like scary face. But I would have much preferred an actual Goblin costume. That's just maybe me, and that would have made it more accurate. But other than that, this is a freaking peak phenomenal Norman Osborn Green Goblin adaptation. Next up, Mary Jane.
Wow.
MJ in this movie isn't really the super sure of herself and strong woman we all have read about over the years. She's not really sure of who she is yet. Whereas we're used to seeing MJ as this like strong, consistent lead, in this film she's still like finding herself. She's younger. But MJ is still the it girl. That's very much right. Everyone's fawning over her. She's a stunner. Kirsten Dunst's portrayal of her in this adaptation still has that, and it's very important and accurate. In terms of her fashion taste, MJ has some great fits, but not really fashionista, you know? At least, not yet. Later sequels would go more into showing off her great fashion sense and stuff, but this movie, she's not really there yet. One of the more important things about MJ, though, is that she's a performer. She loves to perform and longs for the stage, the spotlight, all of it. And I mean this in the best way possible. In the movie, we know she's been performing since she was a little kid when Peter says he loved her performance in the first grade play. MJ talks about her love and longing to be on Broadway, lighting up the stage, and it just makes me ecstatic. This is how MJ should be shown, with big, huge ambitions and goals. Lofty goals like this scare most people, but MJ's brave. She knows she can do it. The confidence is definitely still there. It's just deep inside. One thing I do not like about this MJ portrayal, though, is all the cheating. She cheats on Harry with Spider-Man, and I get it. Harry sucks and Spider-Man keeps saving her life. But also, like, just break up with the dude. You don't need to date him. You could, like, totally just break up with him. That's an actual option, sis. Let's take a step back and look at this from, like, a more holistic view, though. This is a really good MJ adaptation. The movie starts off saying,
This, like any story worth telling, is all about a girl.
And really, it is all about MJ. She's the other half to Peter Parker. For a very large majority of their publication, they were the most popular comic book characters in Marvel, maybe even in all of comics. She needs to be a major part of the story and focus. This is a great adaptation of MJ. Just gotta ignore some cheating. Harry Osborn is an interesting adaptation in the first movie. There's good in this adaptation, and there's bad in this adaptation as well. Harry in the comics is Peter's longtime childhood best friend. The two have a really solid friendship, but Harry has such a complicated home life with his father, it ends up bleeding into his friendship with Peter, especially after he finds out the truth about Spider-Man and who Spider-Man is. A lot of this is really well done in the first Raimi movie. We know they're supposed to be best friends, and Harry and his father's relationship is very strained, just like the comics. Their relationship makes Harry act out and strange multiple times in this movie. From judging MJ because she didn't wear the dress color he knows his dad likes, blowing up on MJ at Thanksgiving and disrespecting her, he has some serious daddy issues. Just like Marvel Comics 616. Now, where I do think the movie lacks a bit in this adaptation is showing they were childhood best friends. And Harry also kind of being too much of a jerk isn't accurate. Look at these two boys, Peter and Harry. They're about to graduate high school. But Harry's introducing Peter to his dad? This is supposed to be his childhood best friend. He should know Peter, right? That doesn't really make much sense to me. I know Norman kind of doesn't really give any bit of a damn about Harry, but like you'd think he would know his best friend. And the other thing I mentioned is Harry's a bit of a jerk. I mean, like, if this is your best friend and you know he likes this girl and has always liked this girl, you wouldn't do this. I mean, this man straight up takes the words Peter told him after telling Peter that his words are gross and he questions why Peter would even tell him it, uses these same words to pick up the girl he knows Peter's in love with. This is not best friend behavior, man. I know in the comics Harry and MJ date, but the reason they have issues is because MJ is really flippant about their whole relationship and constantly flirts with Peter. Not to mention, Harry has massive drug issues in the comics. The comics has a lot of drama in the group with dating one another, so it's definitely accurate in that sense, but I feel like Harry should be shown less of a dick and more of like, succumbing to his own issues and problems and like questioning his issues, and that's why him and MJ break up and don't work out. I mean, Harry didn't even tell Peter that him and MJ started dating. And they were freaking roommates. They're also roommates in the comics, though. Gotta give them points for that. But still, this is not really best friend behavior. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid adaptation of Harry. I just think he should be a little less Mr. Steal Your Girl and a bit more of a homie and kinder to Peter. If he was a bit lamer and Peter was a bit cooler, we'd be entering absolute peak territory, people. J. Jonah Jameson.
I trust my barber.
Jonah in this movie is something else, man. He is a supreme hater, the supreme hater of the universe. He's similar to his early comic appearances where he's just super over the top. J.K. Simmons literally embodies the early versions of Jameson that couldn't see Spider-Man as anything else other than the most vile, evil menace on the planet. Jonah in the early days was an absolute monster, man. Everything was Spider-Man's fault. Spider-Man could do no right in his eyes. This is the exact same thing in the Raimi movies. The dude's constantly ragging and raging on Spider-Man. Robbie says Spider-Man saved people. Jameson says it's because he caused it. Peter says Spider-Man was helping people. Jameson calls Peter out. The dude is straight up over the top Spider-Man hater in the first film, just like the old days, and man, I freaking love it. Aunt May. This is the Aunt May adaptation. When you think of Aunt May, Rosemary Harris is there in your mind, man. She is Aunt May. For starters, she's the best freaking casted Aunt May. For age alone. In the original comics, Aunt May is an elderly woman. Yet with every adaptation of Spider-Man, she gets younger.
Not even your unusually attractive aunt?
No.
Nah. Rosemary looks exactly like Aunt May. She embodies the character. The movie does a great job at showing how much Aunt May loves Peter and Ben, even after he's gone. She brings him up after he's gone and tastes of ways to keep his memory alive. She's there for Peter when he's upset about Ben's passing. Aunt May just gives off the perfect vibe of love, niceness, and sincerity. Some of my all-time favorite moments of her character actually come from the second film, which I'll be breaking down in the future, but that doesn't mean in the first film she doesn't do her own thing, She's got some stuff going for her. Sometimes other Spider-Man stories feel like they forced Aunt May's inclusion in certain scenes. I mean, she gets attacked by the freaking Green Goblin. Her house gets blown up by the Green Goblin. He's like attacking her, telling her to finish her prayers. Damn, she's really a part of this story, man. She's also like super supportive of Peter, and prior to knowing that Peter is Spider-Man, constantly found herself at odds with villains due to her nephew being a hero and all, and she really wouldn't understand why she's here. And I think that's pretty fire because she's also getting included in these movies in a similar sense. Honestly, I love it. This is a great adaptation of Aunt May. Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben is probably the most known character that never really ever got fleshed out. The man shows up, we know he takes care of Peter and loves Peter, and then he gets shot and killed. The importance of Uncle Ben resides in the lesson he teaches Peter and Spider-Man with his death. Great power comes great responsibility. The reason Peter embodies this motto so well and takes it to heart is because of Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben's death happens literally in the first issue of Spider-Man ever appears in. So he's just not given a lot of time to be a character. And honestly, with Cliff Roberson's Uncle Ben, this is the exact same thing. He doesn't really do much as an actual character. He's a fun dude who says some quirky lines, but most importantly, he teaches Peter the lesson that helps Peter stay on the right path. Flash Thompson.
I don't want to fight you, Flash.
I wouldn't want to fight me neither.
Flash Thompson in Spider-Man's comic mythos is actually a very deep character. He's a jerk and a bully, much like in the Raimi films, but man is he so much more than that. Flash idolizes Spider-Man. He joins the military, loses his ability to walk, and becomes an actual decent person. The character is literally the poster child for character growth. Flash goes from a deplorable degenerate to a frenemy to Peter to someone that Peter identifies as his own hero. Remy's Flash, however, not that. Nope, he never reaches that point. The dude is just an over-the-top jerk bully. I mean, like, really over the top. I don't think there's a single scene he's not being rude to someone. I think the character is really funny, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think this is a really good Flash adaptation. Flash has a lot of nuance. Way more nuance than just an over-the-top a-hole. You know what's also funny? I could totally see Joe Manganiello as a great Flash, like, give him the depth and everything. The writing just wasn't there, there wasn't enough screen time for him. There's more characters in the movies I'd like to talk about, there's like Roby, for example, he doesn't get fully fleshed out as like the upstanding editor he is, but you get glimpses. You got Betty over there as like the bugle assistant working right underneath Jameson. Dr. Strome's in the film being a villain scientist. I really enjoy this movie not trying to make like new original characters. There's so many characters in Spider-Man's mythos, I don't think it's necessary to create new ones. There's so much substance to pull from, man. There's so much of it. The last thing I'm going to bring up is how influential these movies are. They're so influential, 616 adapted the Adaptation. And what I mean by this is 616 directly pulled dialogue and tropes from what happened in this movie to the comics. Recently, Peter Parker and Norman have been having like a father-son dynamic, and Peter speaks as if it's always been like this. When if you've read 616 comics, you know this is not true in the slightest. Peter has always thought that Norman Osborn was a super creepy weirdo. Can't stand him. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man film was so influential, Spider-Man writers were actively acting as if Raimi's mythos were the actual mythos for 616 when they're not. Another example would be Norman Osborn saying the dialogue about beating the old lady with a stick. Word for word, bar for bar, just given to Norman instead of Peter. I personally think this is like super freaking lazy by the writers on both accounts. Do your research and write a Spider-Man comic that fits in the consistency of the universe it's set in. Don't just pull on popular tropes and funny moments from an already popular universe. However, from Raimi's perspective, it's hard to not realize how godlike that is. Your film was so good, actual comic writers started jocking your stuff. The professionals paid to write comics are like, word, wait, I gotta cheat off Raimi. I gotta copy Raimi's stuff down. He know what he's doing. Yeah, I'd feel like a king if I was Raimi too, I'm not gonna lie. All in all, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is a freaking phenomenal adaptation. Spider-Man feels like Spider-Man. Green Goblin, in my opinion, is at his absolute peak, the summit of Green Goblins. The supporting cast and friends, for the most part, feel like they've been handled with care and love. Sure, it has faults and mistakes. It's not 100% accurate. But this is the first ever live-action Spider-Man film we got from Hollywood. The fact that this was even this good and accurate is a miracle in itself. We were almost stuck with like a James Cameron-led Spider-Man film with Leonardo DiCaprio at the mantle of Spider-Man that would have had way more sex, apparently. I'm so glad I don't live in that universe. Although I am curious. I hope you all enjoyed this video. The plan is to make one of these for each movie that releases in theaters. I plan to watch every single one of them as they come out on the big screen again. I've already seen them on the big screen, every single one of them, but this is like, I'm going to do it again because I can. And I want to make a video on each of them as they come out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out the Discord if you want to talk to me more on there. And check out the next video that drops. Dunk out. Peace.